So I've partly unstitched it. I haven't stitched it all the way. Now there is a slight bit of a slack in the zip, and that's basically what we want, because we want to move that slack towards the bottom area. So I've just partly unstitched it, and one of the reasons why I've partly unstitched it is so that we don't get confused and we can follow the same line of sewing really. Because if you do end up making that mistake, I think what I would suggest, and you learn from your own mistakes, is that use a tacking stitch, meaning that put your stitching on a fairly wide stitching, and that way if you have to unpick, then at least it's easier to unpick and you can adjust it, and if you've done it right, you can just seam over the initial seaming with a tight compact stitch. So even though I do most of my work live, so you know what, there's nothing hidden or anything, so what you're seeing is what's basically happening, and there's no secret about it. I'm not ashamed of the fact that we make slight mistakes and we learn from them. So what I would say on something like that is, a mistake is not a mistake if you've learned from it. A mistake is only a mistake if you've not learned from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's people who go on in life and make a mistake after a mistake and they don't learn from it. As long as you're willing to admit your fault and learn from that fault, then alhamdulillah, we have to thank Allah that it's not a mistake. It was you know, through your mistake many other people can benefit, then that is a blessing. And that's the enjoyable part of sewing, sharing your work, and obviously sharing your mistakes and your pitfalls as well. See, if we didn't make mistakes, then everybody will be looking at perfection, and we'll all be thinking that no way is this possible, I can't do it. So when others that we look up to make mistakes, then we think that, well, this person who I think is such a brilliant person and went and made this mistake, then, you know, there's hope for us. So there we are. Now then, let's see what our what we managed to accomplish second time round. So what we're going to do is close this up. Now it's almost identical, but there is parts of the beads missing as well. So what we're going to do is try and get hold of something that we can replace that patch with, and then that bit of minute difference I don't think is gonna really matter. And today I'm on a Jackanory story time. I'll actually tell you a little story about something like this that had happened to me when I first started teaching on the internet. I don't know how many of the viewers will remember this episode, but I basically started teaching in 2010. And the first videos that I did, I had actually bought fabric from a store called Maharaja's, and I bought this cheap fabric, a full set of it, and from that I'd made, out of the 5 colours, I'd made 5 different outfits, designed them beautifully, and then Maharaja Textiles is actually a warehouse and in Bradford. And I'd gone back and displayed the suits in their store. So whoever came admired the suits, and one of the things that I was hoping and aiming to do was that many retailers would take part in promoting the sewing side. So in promoting the sewing side, the way it was going to help retailers was the more people who knew how to sew, the more people would buy fabrics. And as I saw it, I saw the fabric market on a decline. So I thought if I encouraged and motivated people and showed them ideas on how to sew, then more people will be influenced to buy the fabrics, and if the shopkeepers participated in that, it will help them along as well. Unfortunately, not all shopkeepers saw it that way. So when one day I was in Maharaja's, and this family came from Birmingham to do some shopping at Maharaja's, and she looked at the suits and she was admiring them and asking a few questions. Now, since I was standing there, I actually intervened and I said, well, I'm the person who designed the suits. And all of a sudden, instead of, before she was admiring them, but now it was like we were in competition, and she started to nitpick faults out of them. So one of the suits that I had sewn, it had, you know, just like I had shown on this suit, you know, where the slight bit of very, very marginal difference between the two patiya meeting, there was a very marginal difference on one of the suits where the two laces were meeting up, and because they didn't meet up, she was nitpicking, and all of a sudden she's found this fault, and she says, so you call yourself a professional, what kind of sewing is this? And I was actually just dumbfounded, gobsmacked, because I wasn't expecting that. And she just threw it at me, and you know, I was actually blown away. I didn't know what to say. The guys who worked there knew me very well, and he couldn't help it. He came up to her and he said, you know what, you haven't paid anything to get this stitched, so why are you trying to find faults? I'd like to see you make something even to this quality. So, you know, I said to her, look, I'm not trying to sell you my expertise in making of the suit. I'm trying to show what you can do with the fabric, and even a cheap fabric, how well you can design it into a unique outfit. So there are people who will nitpick. Now this can be perfect, but the only way this stuff like this will become perfect is if you have the like, obviously we had limited access to get to this. This is a closed and if you paid, I suppose there is a way out. You know, if you are paying very much attention, then you will get there. But generally when these zips are attached, they're attached prior to all this garment being stitched from the other side. Also, with this heavy garments, stuff like this adds on a lot of weight, and these are generally attached towards the ending so that there is less weight. The less weight you're carrying, the less messing around. Also before I finish off here, is a thing to bear in mind is fabrics like velvet do tend to drag. So on the one side, if you're using a stitching which is going in the one direction, is dragging, and on the other one is, you know, dragging in the opposite direction, you can end up having problems as well. So just a few things to bear in mind. I'm sorry that the video went on a little bit. I hope you enjoyed the story and it gives you lessons to learn. There were mistakes that I went along and made in this as well, but you know what, mistakes are to be learned from. So now the zip is attached. What we're going to do is there's just a little bit of an opening at the bottom, and that needs to get closed off, and the zip will be hidden on the inside. So to close that off, what we're going to do is go on the inside of the dress. Now this is, in comparison, this is relatively easy. Okay, so we're going to do two things. It's going to Simba wants to be in the video, that's what it is. We worked that out. She likes attention, Simba. So we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to slightly attach this, close it up a little bit, just leaving about an inch of space, and then we're going to trap that between the lining and the dress. So do two seams here. So there is actually a cut, and we're going to stitch this up to the cut. This was the original cut. And when you're doing this, make sure that the fabric is on a single fold. I'm doing. Your pony's gone off. Oh, never mind. Put away the threads. And then
two ponies got off. Two ponies got off.
oh.
I need to put it back on.
So first of all, we need to just do the lining separately.
I said to you yesterday you need to bring other girls.
They're gone to Mars.
Huh?
They're gone to read.
I've been to Mars before and then
Yeah, but you get chutti early, okay? They haven't finished yet. They haven't finished yet.
Another book. Okay.
Alright, so we've, first of all, we've just attached that down. Now what we're going to do is in the rest of the space, that dress part, I'm going to grab a lot of that, push it in.
I just put my foot chocolate. I know how to put my pony on now.
Do you?
Huh?
Do you?
Yeah.
Good girl.
If I can't do it, what's my
Access
mom
to
wants
this.
to do it?
Let's just open easy. It's all confusing getting into the zip.
Do you know how to put your own pony on?
Yeah.
I know how to put my own pony on.
Good girl.
If I can't, my mom do it for me.
Mm.
Daddy, should I put my pony up? It's not tomorrow, not sure.
We're going to close this off
Daddy, how do you that for me?
up to about that much of the zip. Pin it, it's not.
What?
It's finding hard to get access to it. You pause it back. No. So this has been the hardest part to get right. Okay, so what we've done is we've just pinned it in a couple of places just to make sure that it's right. And the best way to actually do this is to perhaps hand tack it. But you know what? I haven't got the patience for hand tacking.
I'm going bye.
So I will.
Bye-bye. Bye, lovies.
Then make my double my scarf, okay?
What?
Make my double member, okay?
Why?
Because
Oh. Haven't you got enough jubbas and scarves? There
Oh,
you
she
are.
said-
Another order.
No, she's asking you to take that upstairs for her.
Oh, take it upstairs. All right. I thought it was an order to make one.
leave it outside, okay? That's all.
You won't be yours maybe that, did you? Lovely.
Look, that one's cool.
You appreciate her now, don't you?
Yeah.
Since yesterday.
Look, where's
Since yesterday.
Cookie. Cutter.
So
Hello, Catty.
that's basically
Catty.
it's closed off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a secondary stitching because when we've initially pulled this out, I think slight bit of the fabric has gone on it. But I don't think you had a problem with it being wide enough.
No, it'll be fine.
So we can actually
Put the bed
take that
up,
in
the bed.
slightly more.
Okay, pause there, yeah?
Yeah, you can pause.